Good evening, everybody. I would like to reconvene the regular City of Angels City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 6, 2016. Will you please all stand and join in a pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item I'd like to report out of a closed session that was held at our last council meeting of August 16th. That closed session was convened after we adjourned our regular meeting, and so there was nobody left to report to, so I'm happy to report that under that item, performance evaluation of the city administrator, that discussions are ongoing. Earlier tonight, we also had two closed-door sessions. Item A being conference with legal counsel on existing litigation involving Marie Starr, and direction was given to our attorney. The second item was conference with legal counsel concerning existing litigation regarding Ronald Austin versus the City of Angels Camp, and I'm happy to report that that lawsuit has been settled. The next item will be the approval of tonight's agenda. Let me first ask, is there anyone on the council or a member of staff that wants to amend the agenda as presented? Is there anyone in the audience that would request that an item on the agenda be amended?
I didn't think you started until 6 o'clock.
What's that?
We didn't think you started to go into your office until 6 o'clock.
We had the closed door session before that.
Okay.
So you've already gone through things that
Excuse
are
me,
not on
we're
the
not,
agenda.
if you have an item you want to request that the agenda be amended, you can do so now. If not, then save your comment till public comment. Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Councilman Behill, seconded by Councilman Soban. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. We have in our packet a comprehensive staff update from the various departments. Is there any questions or comments on any item by a member of the council?
I have a question, Michael, on the wetlands. Notice you got a proposal in. Have you got a schedule for review and approval or decision?
No, we only, at this point in time, we just received proposals Friday. Monday was a holiday, so we have to go through the whole process of going through contracts and setting up schedules.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, any other comment from the council? Any comment from the member of the public on the content of the consolidated staff report? That's an information item only, requiring no action. The next item is council updates, and I will begin on my left with Vice Mayor Polando.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Silva.
Okay, on the 20th, I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony for the gallery at Greenhorn Creek. It was a pretty large turnout of the festivities after the ribbon cutting, so hopefully that's going to be a positive for the city. On the 23rd, I attended Utica Water and Power Board meeting. We had some discussion about some bills before the state legislature regarding water issues and the status of those. All seem to be moving in a positive direction. The staff reported, though, that there were some repairs that had to be done on a couple sections of the plume due to rotted timbers, and that there is a continuation of water theft at some locations. On the 25th, I attended the Mark Twain Festival Committee meeting. This was kind of a status report session where all the different committees gave status reports regarding the individual activities that they had volunteered to help with. On the 26th, I volunteered to help raffle tickets at the farmers market, and Susan Randolph or Rudolph was the principal ticket seller, and she's destined to end up on the council next year. And finally, on the 30th, we all had a budget workshop here.
I have nothing to report.
No report.
And the only item I have to report is similar to Councilman Soban, is on the 20th, I officiated with the official ribbon cutting ceremony for the new subdivision called the Galleries in Greenhorn Creek, and I also attended the budget workshop. The next item is the public comment portion of the meeting. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on a matter not on the agenda. State law prohibits the city council from acting upon such matters not on the agenda, and matters raised by the public will be referred to staff or placed on the next meeting agenda. So anybody that would like to address the council, now would be the time. Please come to the podium. State your name and address, if you would.
Hi, my name is Diane Jarvie, and I live at 520 Smith Flat Road in Angels Camp. And, I am the chair for the Angels Camp Friends of the Library. Many of you have seen me before. I know me. I, number one, would like to thank the three of you who I know will be leaving at the end of the year, for all of your support and helping the library over these past few years. My reason for coming tonight will be short, and that I simply would like to introduce to you our new county librarian. She replaces Moya Hoekstra, who retired the end of last year after 17 years. And our new county librarian is Nancy Giddens. And I've asked her to come before you tonight and just say a few words. So.
Thank you very much. I'm
Welcome.
very happy to meet you all. Heard great things about the City of Angels. I think the City of Angels and the library system of Calaveras County are a wonderful example of partnership, as you provide the facility for us to offer to your citizens the services, the library services, the staff who serve your citizens, as well as all of the resources. And I know that there are people who think that libraries are a thing of the past and perhaps should just disappear from our lives. However, there are people who I know primarily say, well, everyone gets all of their information on the internet. And if that's true, even if that's true, it's of interest to note that in California, at least 25% of the citizens of California don't have internet or access to a computer. And so the library serves those people in our communities all over the state by offering free internet, free Wi-Fi. Almost any hour of the day and night, you can see people parked in our parking lots accessing the Wi-Fi, which is available to them there, plus coming into the library to use computers. Now, that's if people get all of their information from computers, which they do not. We still carry newspapers, and every day you'll come to any branch library and see citizens reading the newspapers there. We offer story time for little children, particularly preschoolers and their moms, to come every week. We have over 91,000 pieces of material for citizens to borrow free of charge. DVDs, audio books, e-books can be downloaded through our libraries. We also still carry VHS and cassettes, because we have heard that in Angels Camp is one of the areas where people still use those mediums. So we're not getting rid of those things. We're keeping them available to our citizens. We have a new literacy director as well in the library since I came on board in April, and he is really developing wonderful services for our citizens, GED, but also basic adult education, which is something that our citizens can access through the library. It's a safe place. We were written up this year in the Calaveras Enterprise as one of the cool spots to find a cool respite during the day. And in the winter, we're warm. So it's a safe place for our citizens to come and read and just feel safe. We're expanding. In Angels Camp, by the end of this month, you will have 4 days of 6 hours a day for library patrons to come to the library. So Tuesday through Friday, it will be 11 to 5. And we're hoping we'll keep looking at the hours and keep seeing that we're offering the hours that meet the needs of our citizens. Also, libraries are not unaware that some people think our services are passé, so we're always looking for new things to lend. A library of things and a seed library are 2 of the things that are on our agenda to try to develop this year. So again, I thank you for this partnership. I think we're a fine example of that in Calaveras County. I appreciate so much what you do, and I appreciate the opportunity to greet you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council?
Yes, good evening. Lori White. I live in Angel Oaks.
all of your contacts.
I'm sorry, I'm using my phone as a timer.
Oh, and somebody's phone.
No, that stays there. Please leave it there.
Sorry. With all due respect, you saw me come in, and I was a little surprised because we actually called the office today to find out what time this meeting started, and we were told that it started at 6 o'clock, not that there would be a private meeting at 5:30, and then you would start right after that. So you took care of a few items before we arrived, which quite surprised me, and I think it's inappropriate for the city council to start before the time that it's due. The reason why I wanted to speak during this period of time is I would like to see the city council speak with the state or whoever it is, if it's not the state, to try and get a crosswalk across this area because you take your life in your hands when you cross over from the parking area to attend this meeting. And I think it would be appropriate if somebody from the city could address that with whoever it is that you address things with.
Thank you, Ms. White. Just to correct, the agenda posted on the website indicated a closed-door session starting at 5:30, and we started promptly at 6 o'clock, and if anything, you may have missed the pledge to the flag, but that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the council? Seeing none, I will declare the public comment period over with. The next item is our consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda, starting with approval of minutes of August 16th. Information item only from the Council of Governments on Regional Transportation Plan update. Adopt a resolution approving a notice of completion for park upgrade projects. Approve a museum commission appointment. And introduction of an ordinance number 478, amending Title 22 of the Municipal Code regarding the City's Museum Commission and setting the public hearing for that. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to have one or more items pulled? Okay, I would like to pull item B and make a brief comment about it. Is there anybody in the audience that would like an item pulled so that you could comment further on it?
I like pull item D.
D, okay. All right. We will pull item B and C. Is there a motion to approve items A, C, and E?
Did you say D or C?
D is in David.
D as in David.
D.
B and D. You said C, though, I thought.
I said B.
This will be an ACE approval, ACE.
So we have items A, C, and E with a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that one.
Moved by Councilman Behill, seconded by Councilman Soban. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll take my item first, item B, and I'm not sure whether it's David Hannum or Dave Meyer, but in going through the list of projects that are currently on the RTP update. Sounds like we're going to take those projects as a base and add additional projects to that, or delete projects from that list?
You are correct. We'll add and delete from that list, and we'll also update the prices. So it's
Are
just
we
kind of,
going to consider adding all of those streets that were addressed during the 449 corridor study, either new streets to be planned, existing streets to be realigned? Are those going to make that list?
typically, that's anything in an adopted plan. Anything the council has approved will be added into the list. So if those streets were added in and the council's approved it, or it's been through public hearing, yeah, we'll add them onto the RTP.
Okay, that was my question. Any other questions of Mr. Meyer while he's there? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve item B.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Soban, seconded by Councilwoman Morris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item D, the Museum Commission appointment.
Right, whenever I see an appointment, especially a volunteer position, I always like to acknowledge the person. That's the only reason I want to bring this out. So I want to thank Marilyn Smith for stepping forward and acknowledge her contribution.
Thank you,
Is
Marilyn.
she here?
Stand up, Marilyn.
She just sat down.
So with that, I move that we,
Okay, it's been moved to
Item
approve
D.
the Museum Commission appointment. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman Morris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Marilyn, congratulations.
And thank you for stepping forward.
Okay. The first item on our regular agenda is the new master, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble tonight, the new master fee schedule, and presented by City Administrator, Mr. McCann.
Actually, I passed the baton on to the finance officer. She actually prepared the report, and so I'm here to offer her support on any items that questions or concerns council has on this report.
Good evening. I'm here to present the new master fee schedule. The fees have not been revitalized or changed since 2012, so this represents a 4-year kind of hiatus before we came back and looked at these fees again, the vast majority of them anyway. The city administrator had asked all the departments to update their fees. We did do it mostly based on a cost basis rationale. We had every department decide how many hours or the types of things they would need to use to do certain activities. So most of these are fee-based unless they're penalty-based, and then we didn't worry so much about the costs. So I don't know if legal counsel has a question about them. The highlighted items on the list are the ones that have changed from year to year. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I can give you some general categories that we did look at. Planning fees were looked at very closely. Most of them didn't change a lot. They went to an actual cost basis plus an administrative fee. This is seen as a very good way to do it from the perspective of a developer because they know they're only getting the actual costs and they're not being paid for something else. And because we have worked very hard in our community development department and accounting departments to work together to come up with a automated project system, we feel that we can go more on a deposit basis and then return money that wasn't used or request more when it's needed to protect the city. So many of the planning fees went to this actual cost plus administrative fee with a deposit required up front. We're looking at having the deposit looked at when there's about 25% of it left, so that if there's still a lot more work to do and we don't have enough deposit, we will request more deposit at that point in time. Another major change was on the water and sewer deposits. We previously only collected $100 from people with water and sewer services, which is returned to owners after 12 months of good credit. But renters, we have many renters in those particular houses. And right now, we're allowing renters to receive the bills, and they're the ones paying the $100. And we are finding that there are a lot of defaults. As we move towards rate hearings, we're probably going to suggest that we go back to an owner-only type of billing scenario. It creates a lot of synergies for us in that we can literally go through collections on the tax bill as opposed to incurring the fees of a collection agency and losing some of the money. So we will probably move towards that. But in the meantime, we're suggesting that we bring that deposit up to $250 per, or $100 I think I had on the water and $150 on the sewer, because we are losing a lot of money with renters leaving and not paying their bills. Other than that, we have some public work fees that were newly developed. One is for hanging banners and helping with outside events that you may want to look at here. Right now, our budget is predicated on about $11,000 worth of revenue on that new fee. We also have one for, let's see, it was banners and, reservations for the covered park area, which also has a $10,000 budget line item in the budget. We were hoping to get some feedback on those so that if we get to the budget hearing, which is next, we can maybe adjust for those. Right now, we're just requesting that the City Council set a public hearing date and give us whatever feedback they have on the fees that we've proposed.
On the cover in the park, the one that's needing replacement is the circular gazebo type one.
That's correct.
And the rental, that's rented out?
No, it's the bigger awning area.
That's what I understood, but the repair work is needed on the smaller circular
Correct.
one.
Correct.
Either
They're two
remove it
unrelated
or-
issues, as far as I know.
Oh, they're not tied together with
No.
this? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if I understand, even though we're going to have a public hearing at the next council meeting and hear testimony and probably talk about specific fees, you would like some feedback tonight as well from the council and members of the public?
If it's appropriate.
Well,
And there may not be any at this point in time, since
sure.
it's a little premature, but to Julie's point, a couple of these are specifically tied to the budget. The others are not. The large picnic shelter, we have weekend events, sometimes twice a day or to 3 times a day weekend events at that particular shelter, and I didn't want to confuse one shelter with the other. You'll note that the small gazebo is not highlighted, nor is it recommended we do anything with it at this time. I think we would prefer looking at that as a revenue generating opportunity for special events, weddings, and other things. And we'd be better served looking at utilizing that facility as opposed to just tearing it down. So there's no intimate safety risk at this point in time, but we want to look at it a little bit more.
Okay. Just in preparation for the public hearing, my copy of the fees did not come out with any highlighting. So I manually went through it, but I may have missed some. So
You're right.
so
The
for
copy didn't catch it, you're correct.
What's that?
It doesn't seem like the copy caught it,
It's
so
just a
I'll
real
make
faint
sure.
shadow.
Yeah.
I will
so
make sure it's on the next one.
Maybe with the agenda, the actual public hearing, we can use a different ink or something. Well, I'll start with giving you just some general feedback from me on the council, and then we'll ask the public to do the same. I'm not going to comment on any specific fee, but I do understand and believe in the wisdom of the city recovering its costs for serving the public, whether it's plan checking, a building permit, whether it's processing, conditional use permit at the Planning Commission. There is a tremendous amount of staff effort that goes into some of these projects, and you don't really know until you get into them, sometimes just where that process is going to take you. So by establishing the upfront deposit, adjusting it based on actual cost, I would only hope that once you start a project, and if you basically used up in staff time all of that deposit, that you wouldn't stop the project and say you need to put up more money before we start doing any more work on it. I would hope that, that project would still keep its place in line, keep its priority, and that the deposit just be increased, or some equitable way of doing that. By raising the sewer and water deposits for renters, I get it, I understand that they're more transient in nature, and oftentimes they leave in the middle of the night. If you're going to put the burden back on the property owner, hopefully a prudent property owner would then collect some sort of a deposit from its renters, and if there's a way of trying to make that happen, I would encourage you to do that as well. That's all my comments. Anybody else?
Well, I tried to go through and look at what I consider, or tried to separate what would be considered maybe a straightforward adjustment and separate out some that stood out as being significant and understand why. So if there would be, when it comes time to present this, if you could do something similar. There are obviously, like you mentioned, a couple places where you're doing things that have not been done before. And in those cases, identify those. That would help me a lot.
To me, the city is here to serve its citizens, and in that vein, I'd like to know, I don't know if it's possible, but how many of these costs are fixed versus variable costs for items? We have staff that we pay regardless of what they do during the day. If we're not, if we're putting on a workload that's causing overtime, I can understand that that would be a variable cost and that would need to be addressed. But there are certain things that staff does that's, you can bill out, well, an hour of staff time for a project and you can put a cost to that, but that's an hour that we would have paid anyway, so it's really a fixed cost or an indirect cost. And I have no problem with the citizens paying for direct costs and variable costs, but I have a problem with the fixed and paying the indirect costs. And so, in general, we're going to a public hearing on these fees, and I'd like to see more input from the public, or else we're going to, be passing fees, as we've done in the past, that, in my opinion, aren't always equitable.
Are there any members of the public that would like to offer a preliminary comment on this whole concept of adjusting fees?
David White from Live Oak Drive. Fees, can I tackle the water thing first? We have a rental in Portola, and the way we got over it with the council in Portola is that the city put out the original bill for water to the owner because it's his house. Not everybody agreed with it, and I didn't, but it's the way it is, and it works. But he sends a copy to the rental so that the people who are renting the house also get a copy. Now, sensible owners should only be renting their property to people, in my opinion, through a management company, so that they can be protected by deposits when the renter goes into the property for the first time. But I think also we need to look at when we need to discriminate between an owner and an owner occupying a renter. When we have a new person come to live in the city, how do we decide whether or not they have to pay a deposit is the question. And the answer should be, we do a credit check and we charge them for it because we can do that through our bank. And we should do the same with the renter. And if the renter comes and wants a water supply which comes with sewer, then why can't we do a credit check? But the two together work. It's a big problem in Portola with this transient occupation of renters, and we need to tackle it from tackle them both at the same time. Some might say, well, I'm an owner-occupier, and why should I have to pay a big deposit? If we do the right thing by the owner and the renter and do a credit check, then if the credit check's good enough for the banks and all kinds of other people credit card, why can't we do it? It's $15 and your bank will do it for you. My second one was going to be something that's near and dear to my heart that we brought up, and I'm sorry we've been missing for a few weeks. We're getting our feet on the ground. We talked about charging a fee for fire inspections. It's a cost to the city to go out and inspect a commercial property. And I believe that the owner of the commercial property should pay a fee for that inspection. So that's my continued thoughts on that. If we're going to inspect properties and it's going to, the City Fire Brigade they work for the city. So if they're working for the city are paying their wages, the city are paying the whole thing, then surely if they have to carry out a fire inspection, then why can't we do a fee? It doesn't have to be $500, but it should cover the cost of the inspection and the paperwork that goes with it after the event. So that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White. Anybody else want to comment on the proposed fee schedule? Okay, if not, we're not going to take any action on it tonight. All we're going to do is set a public hearing for,
I believe we were looking at the first week in October. That's the first time we can get the proper notices done.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mary?
yeah,
I think so. That would be the 4th of October?
yeah.
That's what's on here.
Okay, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to set a public hearing for October 4th for adopting the master fee schedule.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Soban,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Morris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And the next item is the public hearing this evening on adoption of the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. The city administrator will make the presentation.
Mayor and members of the council, members of the public, at the last meeting, we had a workshop on the fiscal year 2016-2017 annual budget, kind of rehashing a couple of the critical elements. This budget, again, reflects our commitment to provide a high level of service to our community. The city has managed through a very difficult financial time by way of the Great Recession, but through that, we've seen continued increases in sales tax revenue and transient occupancy tax revenue, or TOT revenue. But with that said, it's been in slow but steady growth, and we are just now getting to revenue peaks that we witnessed in fiscal year 2008-2009. We enter this budget cycle like we have most every other budget cycle, challenged with CalPERS and retirement cost, healthcare cost increases, as well as the increases that we have through our risk management pool, whether it's through workers' compensation or liability. For the most part, as I stated before, this is a hold-the-line budget or base budget. And the result of this budget and plan, I believe, meets the need of the community without mortgaging our future. In terms of budget principles, basic services are financed at conservative levels. Revenues have been estimated at realistic levels. Reserve policies afford protection against shortfalls. Productivity improvements through technology and human resources are employed in all city services. One-time monies have not been used for reoccurring expenditures. All applicable revenues have been computed consistent with provisions of Prop 218. The City of Angels Camp quality of life is maintained by this plan. And again, it becomes the building block to help Angels Camp become a great place to live, work, and play in the future. As far as a budget approach, we've talked about it being a collaborative process. It includes staff input, management buy-in, administrative support. We had one part of the community process through the workshop, and now we're going through the next part tonight with the public hearing. We have some policies that we follow with regards to the budget. That includes prudent fiscal management, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, community building, enhancing our services, preserving our environment, comprehensive planning, economic development, as well as leadership and image. Council will note that there are 37 additional budget requests. That means they are not part of the base budget. We will go through those at the end of this part of the presentation, but they've been highlighted by me through areas that I believe provide either succession planning, operational efficiency, operational coverage, public safety. That could also be public liability, capital requirements, and community outreach. And then I also feel strongly that we need to work towards continued growing out of the structural deficit. Therefore, I view the community support being important, but also for the council to take a hard look at a tax consultant and that request so that we can help close the structural deficit that we faced over the past few years. All totaled, if we approved all the additional requests, the numbers that you see on the screen would reduce your fund balances by those amounts. Those are not recommendations. Those just give you an order of magnitude if they're all approved. So again, the additional requests, those were essentially scrubbed out of the base budget. And I've highlighted those that I believe provide the most bang for the buck. And again, I feel strongly about growing out of the structural deficit and taking a hard look at that. And there's some items that we won't approve tonight. You won't go through the process of approving, but those items should be held in abeyance pending a mid-year review and or our continued look at alternative funding sources either through grants or other mechanisms. While it's my conclusion, it's really kind of the start of the process now is the public hearing. I do want to thank the council for their guidance and staff for their dedication in helping maintain Angels Camp as a great place to live, work, and play. Moving forward, I've listed a number of steps that I believe we should undertake. They're on the screen, but kind of hashing on some of the major ones is continue to look at efficient ways of operating, taking a look at city-owned facilities and potential consolidation. Julie already mentioned looking at fees for service and be prepared to make tough decisions and choices with regards to those fees and whether or not we should currently continue to subsidize those programs. continued partnerships with Destination Angels Camp Business Association, and the Visitors Bureau, and in working with them in sustainable change in tourism, business expansion, job creation, and retention, and ultimately growing our property tax, sales tax, and tourism tax base. So the budget that you have before you is recommended for approval. So the steps. So in advance of the public hearing, council had the opportunity to, from the workshop, send out questions to myself and Julie, and we'll go through some of those questions and then the answers as we go through that. So why the big jump in rent and leases? Expenses up 42%. The increase is mainly due to the expected payment of the new fire truck. The Type 3 engine was leased through municipal asset management. It was not purchased outright. It was one of the options, but the direction was given to explore the lease, which is what we did at the time. So that's why the jump. In terms of page 7, the USDA water loan carries an interest rate of 4.25%. Isn't that rather high for a loan of this type? Coincidentally, the finance officer is already in contact with public finance firm who has presented a proposal to refinance this loan at 3.18%, which would yield a net cash flow savings of over $500,000. Again, it's initial discussions, but we're already taking a look at that. Page 25, the question was, is the $174,801 revenue in fire strike team reimbursement associated with actual revenues expected from last year's rim fire? No, those have to do with the current fire season, and we are in the middle of that, and for all intent and purposes, we've already exceeded those expectations with regards to revenue at this point in time. On page 31, there's a transfer of $6,516 in TOT revenue for street cleaning. The expenditures on page 62 within the TOT budget. For budget presentation purposes, the expenditure for street cleaning is included in the Public Works Department, which is on page 31. The total expenditures for street cleaning is supported by two sources. That includes from Caltrans as well as TOT, and they both end up appearing on page 31. Another question was, what is the downtown sustainability project for $34,000? The downtown sustainability project is part of a sustainability grant that we received from Caltrans for looking at the circulation, parking, and potential land uses of the downtown corridor. The project is funded through COG, and it's something that we're actually right in the middle of as we speak.
Can you go back to that one? I'm trying to read the last sentence or so.
So the TOT funding is to cover the cost of labor
Yeah.
related toward business and planning, or my time with respects to the project, because we can't charge our time directly to the project.
Okay, that was the reason for the question. If it was totally grant funded, why are we spending?
No, we can't charge our time to the grant fund, so it becomes what source of funds do we charge our time to?
Okay.
We're getting some small writing here. I tried to keep it not so small, but page 61, I'd like more detailed description of the following. Labor costs from admin and finance in $46,000, and expenditures from admin and finance in $8,000. Time was allocated to TOT roads for finance and administration staff as follows. Payroll staff time was allocated based upon the amount of time all departments were budgeted within road-related tasks. Accounts payable staff time was allocated based on percentage of dollars that were spent for road project activities in the prior year. Cash receipt staff time was allocated based upon the number of receipts that were recorded to road-related activities. Administrative time was allocated half as a percentage of road labor to total labor in the current budget,
and half as a percentage of total road-related dollars spent to total dollars spent during the prior year. And then the amount also includes $8,500 in project labor for myself with regards to road projects. It includes the Gateway Corridor project and road impact fee projects that were not funded elsewhere. For each department, once labor is allocated between the general fund, roads, water, wastewater, et cetera, the expenditures are allocated based on some relative percentage, which resulted in the figures that you had. The next question had to do with planning and building, $32,198, and planning and building, $13,701. Collectively, these two departments are charging off over $100,000 in expenses to fund that they should not have very much involvement with. Well, the planning and building, especially planning in particular, is heavily involved to the tune of estimated 660 hours in road-related activities in the current budget, including interactions with COG to obtain funding and working with them on road-related projects and advanced planning for those, and those are not funded elsewhere. One such example would be the relinquishment of the Vallecito Bridge. Most of the funding for road projects is obtained through COG, similar to operations and maintenance costs addressed in the above question. The general costs are allocated based upon the relative amount of time that we foresee that we'll spend on those projects. Page 70 has to do with the transfer out expense of $14,000 is labeled as truck lease payment. Again, that ties back to the Type 3 fire engine. Page 71 explained the $10,760 transfer out to admin and finance for parks impact fee. That has to do with our payment to the Veterans District for the swimming pool. And it was purchased at $40,000, $10,000 a year for the expansion of Tryon Park. And that is coming out of impact fees. A question or a comment was raised that would be helpful if the source fund for individual revenue line items was identified by some sort of footnote. The finance officer noted that they'll change the presentation next year to provide a list of funds or departments that show these revenues. On page 6 of the executive summary, we talk about a road fund. It's mentioned along with the general fund, water fund, wastewater fund. And then at the bottom of the page, reference is made to the wastewater impact fee rate studies and acknowledges staff will recommend a defined street project. The major elements of city infrastructure includes roads and streets, like water and sewer that are aging, and so having that defined street project and part of a schedule, I believe the intent was to show that that was imperative, and as imperative as water and wastewater is. So this was more of a statement, and the presentation next year will be made to present all road funds together, similar to water and wastewater, so that we can capture that in that fashion. Then there was discussion with regards to contributions to Utica Water and Power Authority. We are analyzing that in concert with both the rate and impact fee studies to include funding for these critical components. Council is aware that we, over the past few years, have had to provide additional support to Utica Water and Power Authority because of the impacts of the drought and the lack of revenue that they derive through power sales. So we have not lost sight of that issue, and it will be a major part of those components, both rates and impacts moving forward. On page 38, I see that $209,200 is to come from the water fund towards the $230,000 to be paid to Utica Water and Power, and that there's a remaining $20,800 within that fund from the UWPA meter fee. Are there 1,700 meters in the city? There are 1,723 meters that pay that $1 a month. The money has typically been used first for the contribution required for the UWPA system, with the remaining portion being funded from water operations and maintenance account. This year's contribution is in fact comprised of a projected $20,800 income from our customers during the current year based on the meter fee. And if you were to look to page 78, you would see that, in addition to contribution from the water fund of $209,000 in order to meet the demands of UWPA. It's asked about the K-9 program in the fire department. Yes, the fire department does have an active K-9 program. The fire department has a Dalmatian. The Dalmatian is used as the mascot and for training demonstrations for schools. And the expenditures related to that cost are covered by an independent grant this year, as well as many of the years in the past. Filtering through the additional budget requests is difficult. All have a certain amount of merit. The question is, which would provide the most bang for the buck? For me, ranking should be determined by, again, this is more comment, a need to eliminate or significantly reduce liability, a chance that the expenditure has a reasonably high probability of eventually bringing commercial expansion to the city, physical infrastructure investment, which can be shown to result in long-term savings in operating and maintenance costs, and physical infrastructure repair, which is needed to prevent more extensive or much more expensive repairs in the future. I don't think staff would disagree with any of those premises. We're pretty much in concert with those. Another comment was, I'm willing to consider a sales tax increase so long as we are in line with neighboring communities. Is a $30,000 consultant needed to accomplish this? The simple answer is yes. The consultant does much of the legwork in advance of a tax measure. They gauge what type of measure would be the most successful. There's different tax measures, whether it's a specific tax, such as the proceeds would go to public safety, as an example, versus a general tax. And they would provide polling samples and determine success rates and actually engage the community in the process so that you would have a more successful tax measure moving forward. So my question comes on the cost of the stairway and the cost of the gazebo. How solid are the estimates? The estimates are recent. I will say that at this time the gazebo is off the table with regards to either tearing it down or rebuilding. As I mentioned when we were talking about fees earlier, I think we should look at the opportunity that gazebo presents and think about restoring it, rebuilding it, enhancing it so that it can actually become a revenue-generating opportunity, even perhaps through weddings or other special events, or a more defined concert stage than what we currently have now. Another question was raised with regards to multiple increases in telecommunication with phones. Telephone expenses have increased dramatically over the past several years, as much as 41% in the case of the administrative fund. These increases are almost entirely due to rates, not increases in use. So the plan upgrades have not been completed, but are needed to decrease the impacts that these rate increases have on city funds, and we are in the process of converting over to voice over IP, which is an internet-based phone system. Ultimately, we would see, once this project's complete, a savings with regards to phones in the future. A question was raised, what does LTD mean? It means long-term disability. Can you please break down road rehabilitation project, and what does this mean in terms of various funding that could support this project? The road rehab project includes budget items and significant council interest in completing actual road projects. We do have identified a $100,000 road project at this time. Again, that's up for council consideration and further deliberation. And there's several sources for that project. It includes TOT road money, gas tax money, a little bit of excess local transportation funds, as well as the pending road relinquishment funds, which should be in the next month or so. With salary increases and some employees' ability to retire in the next 2 to 5 years, what is the cost for the city long-term for retirement? What kind of impacts are we looking at? And what do we need to do to ensure our reserves cover these costs? It's kind of a long answer to that, but there's two components of the cost for retirement. One is the cost of the CalPERS retirement for employees. This benefit is currently in an underfunded position for those employees. The amount of the unfunded liability for each group, whether it's miscellaneous, police, and fire, continues to change as things change at the state with regards to pension funds and their rates. The dynamics of the unfunded liability are probably very complicated, and a lot more that can be explained during this session, but it's something that we are working with and looking at in the future. And this year's budget, you'll note that it includes $320,000 for the current year and $301,000 for the unfunded liability, for a total toward retirement of $621,000. The second component of retirement is post-retirement medical insurance. So when you hear me talk, or Julie talk about OPEB, that's Other Post-Employment Benefit Study, we are in the process of reviewing that plan now. It needs to be updated every 3 years. We are on that third year. We are currently paying as you go for retirees. That is in the budget at $54,000, and we do have a set aside of $275,000 total, and that $275,000 total comes from the general fund, water fund, and the wastewater fund combined. And staff considers to bring more information on both these items in the future, as well as more information with regards to sales tax, and also take these items in consideration when we're looking at water and sewer rates. Explain the debt schedule more, please. Where are we at with paying these down? Is it possible to look at budgeting on these? I am also confused with the wording principal due at the end of the year. Does this mean principal due at loan end? The debt schedule is on page 7. The principal due at end of the year is the amount the city will owe to the various banks and entities after all debt payments are scheduled in the 16-17 budget are made, and we made those payments in the budget. The most significant debt exists with the wastewater fund. We will owe a combined $5 million at the end of 16-17. And we already mentioned we're looking at finance options at this point in time, which would save a significant amount at this point in time. And this also has an effect on rates and fees with regards to water and wastewater. So you'll be hearing more and more about these as we move forward. There was a notice that overtime has been decreased. I understand with office staff, however, why is this drastically decreased in public service? Fire's gone from 16,000 to 2,000. Mainly it's because that we have achieved full-time, part-time staffing with regards to filling any vacancies or any voids of the full-time staff with part-time staff. And there's minimal amount of need for full-time staff for overtime at this point in time. So we've kind of curtailed the use of overtime with this budget. Why have physicals dropped for fire? Isn't this required for some trainings? For this budget period, physicals for the fire department were funded through an outside grant. In absence of another grant the following year, the budget would need to be reestablished to meet fire standards, and we feel that when and if this were to occur, we'd be pretty successful again on a grant. What is the material difference throughout the different budgets between office supplies and materials and supplies? Office supplies are just that. It's the paper, it's the pens, it's the toner. Materials and supplies get a little bit different, a little more complex depending on the area of responsibility, but it can include tools, screws, hardware, patch materials for road, weed eating equipment, Roundup, etc. So lots of different items depending on the particular budget. Under Public Works, what is TV line rental? It is for the TV inspection of sewer lines for cracks and intrusion that we might have in the sewer line. It's not real good TV, but it provides a tremendous benefit to the public. The UWPA budget, are we prepared to allocate more money similar to what happened this last year? I think we've already kind of gone over that and we've addressed it, that it is set up in this year's budget. But again, it needs to be a continued look as we dive into impact fees and rates moving forward. For Public Works, I see there's a huge increase in revenue for building permits. What are the impacts if this prediction does not meet our budget? What projects are we relying on to gain these revenues? Building permits are scheduled on page 20 under Building and Planning. They show a 47,000 increase over the prior period. Community development staff does their best to project what they believe to happen. As an example, they projected 15 new homes. We're already at 6, and so we haven't even finished the first quarter, so we're already on track to exceed that budget. And we're also projecting a 15,000 square foot commercial building. The other question, though, is what happens if we don't meet that prediction? We like to call it more of a projection than a prediction, and it's based on things we know. But that's why we have quarterly budget reports as well as the mid-year report. And if we have to adjust at mid-year or at quarter, that's why we have those reports, so that we can think about those adjustments at that point in time. The rest of this just kind of explains the revenues and how it works with the other departments. We talked about a new meter charge for Public Works. So again, this is something we would look at mid-year to see if we need to have any adjustments to those revenue projections. The $35,000 that we are expected to get from COG, how would that fit in our current project? Is this money that can be used on upgrading, for example, the staircase downtown or improving crosswalks? Staff work together to plan for the efficient utilization of the funds. The $34,000 received for that is considered excess local transportation funds is used for road planning and projects as follows. $17,000 is going towards the Gateway Corridor Planning Project, $8,000 towards Angels Creek Trail, and $9,000 is currently unassigned.
So that 34,000 is already recognized and built into the budget?
All except $9,000 at this point in time. A question was raised a while back with regards to TOT roads and whether or not that can be used for the staircase. We believe that the direction from the city attorney that we was yes, that it can. I said we believe that the attorney did weigh that that would be an appropriate use, so that the staircase could utilize those funds, including TOT roads, in order to construct it. The Vallecito Bridge has a revenue of $291,000. How and where does staff anticipate this funding will go to help with other projects? Will this go directly to upgrading the bridge, or are there other funding sources out there to help with the bridge, so that we're able to use this fund to help support other road and pedestrian projects? I think the recommendation you're going to have is that this revenue right now can better be used and best be used towards current road projects. Currently, the bridge, as Caltrans views it, is functionally obsolete, which means it's neither deficient or unsafe, and the relinquishment funds, in a large part or extent, are really a Band-Aid that isn't needed at this time. When and if the bridge gets to the point that major repairs are needed, there are a number of programs available to the city to apply for funding, and it may be years before this even occurs. Meanwhile, I think we have identified there are more pressing road projects, so this revenue source may be better utilized going towards those projects. In addition, I think it's important to note, with Caltrans relinquishing the bridge, the city now has a say on both the how and when the bridge, and even more importantly, the intersection will be done, instead of Caltrans dictating that. This year, there's a lot of focus on funding roads, but I'd like to know how soon we can start allocating funds in a reserve to upgrade our sewer and water systems without impact to water budget and our general fund. What type of options can council start looking at? We do have sewer and water master plans. Those are in place. Those needs were part of the executive summary. They total in the millions of dollars. The water fund currently does have $6 million in reserves, so projects can be started once short-term plans for construction are established. And the sewer fund has a projected reserve balance of $1 million. Staff would recommend waiting on these, though, until we've gone through the impact fees for both the water and wastewater fund, as well as gone through the rate studies, so that we have a good understanding of both today's dollars and tomorrow's dollars, and how best to secure those needs in the future. So I tried to answer, and actually Julie tried to answer the questions. I just was reading her answers. And so with that, staff is here to answer any questions you have. If you don't have any additional questions, then you can open the public hearing, deliberate the budget, consider the additional requests above base budget, and then finally council would adopt the budget and the resolutions with any noted changes.
Thank you. As you suggest, before we open the public hearing, any additional questions or comment from the council?
I've got one question. Last year at this time, we looked at what would be a reasonable operating budget reserve, or general fund reserve to maintain, and we arrived at a figure of $800,000. This year, the figure recommending is $500,000, and you're quoting that as 20 to 25% of our operating budget or revenues. When I look at the revenues, I look at $3.3 million, and I'm getting about 14% at $500,000.
Take a look at just the pure revenue and take the transfers out.
Okay. Why the difference between 800 and 500?
And 500 is what I said would be the bottom line in last year's budget as well. So that came exactly from the executive summary, that I would not feel comfortable going below 500. When we got to the point of going through additional request, 800 was kind of set as what I felt comfortable, knowing that the economy was still volatile. With the economy stabilizing, to a point where we're a little bit more comfortable with the numbers. If you were looking for a number, I would say anywhere from 650 on up would be a safe place to be, but I wouldn't recommend going much lower than that. But also recognize you have the road funds, if you're looking at road projects, which is separate from the general fund. Does that
Okay.
answer the question?
So what I'm hearing is that you're more comfortable this year with the projections than you were last year.
A little bit more comfortable,
I'm
but
hearing-
I think the council will recognize that we can't continue to operate in the same fashion. So as you go through the pure general fund request, that is going to take the reserve down. I would be hesitant to take it much below what I just stated to you, because that's going to happen again next year, and before you know it, we are at that $500,000 mark next year, before we even start. The other projects, water, wastewater, we don't have the restrictions in the funds, or as many restrictions in the funds that we do in the general fund. And then road fund and TOT, you do have some flexibility on those projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Michael. Okay, at this point, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience is welcome to address the council. I want to remind you that you have one opportunity at the podium. Each person has one opportunity. Once we close the public hearing, then the discussions will focus among the 5 council people. So whatever you might want to convey to us, now is your opportunity. And each person will have at least 3 minutes. If it looks like there's not going to be a lot of public comment, I do have some discretion in allowing longer comment, but I wish everybody would keep their comments, questions to the point and not repetitive. Okay. Mr. White.
Thank you. It's our first budget, and we need to do a lot of digestion before we got any sensible comments, I suppose. But one thing I would like to say, I've been living here for 5 months now, and so I spent a lot of time, as does my wife, we've together spent a lot of time visiting all the local communities to find out what it is that we are different about. Because I think it's important that we, as residents, understand. I mean, for people who've lived here for 20 years, you know where Murphy's and all the other places are, but do we know how they operate? And one of the things I would like to caution you about, we've mentioned sales tax. Calaveras County has a bus service which they are funding again, and they are taking our residents, along with residents from San Andreas, from all around their bus area, to outlying counties to shop. Unless we increase the retail outlets to provide facilities for purchasing, all you're going to do is to drive even more peoples onto the county's bus to go to Walmart, the extended Walmart, to all the other big stores that are growing up in Sonora. And also, it's not that far to the new huge Walmart and Tesco and everything. It's not Tesco and all the other big stores that are just 50 miles in the other direction. Every time you raise a tax, you cause a reaction. Yes, you'll get some money from the population who are just going to continue to go to Save Mart and be done with it. But an awful lot more people are going to use the county's bus to go to outlying areas to do their shopping because it starts to get cheaper. There is a point, a threshold, above which Mrs. A says, no more. I'm going to go to Sonora. And if you drive people to that threshold in this community, which everybody tells us, and I got to tell you, we speak to a lot of people this last 4 or 5 months. There seems to be a fairly static population. I know we're building more houses behind our area, but facts of the matter are, people are born here, they go to school here, they go away to university, and they don't come back because there are no jobs here. To attract jobs and therefore get sales tax, you must provide some kind of retail opportunity or commercial opportunity. And one of the things that it seems to me that some of the other environments are doing is that they are doing that and we're not. We seem to be stuck. Put another penny on a tax. That'll be all right. No, it won't. I was here not so very long ago and we increased the tax on building a new house by sort of 90% overnight. Do you think that's going to encourage a builder to come along and build more and more houses? Now he's got to pay $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is instead of... You can't keep taxing the same people forever. At some time, you've got to expand the base that provides the community's employment. And we're not doing that because they're driving to work in Sonora and everywhere else. That's my saying.
Thank you, Mr. White. Anybody else wish to address the council?
Yes, Lori White from Live Oak. I wasn't aware that David was going to speak on the taxes. He said some of the things that he and I have talked about a lot. But one of the things that I want to add to that is I just asked about the TOT tax. And I have a lot of background when it comes to TOT. I spent 18 years in the hotel business. And what I did was sales. And I don't know that you're considering any raise of the TOT tax, but I'm going to take a moment to implore that raising the TOT, it's real easy. Hey, we'll nab a few extra dollars from this visitor or that visitor. But the way hotels make business is not necessarily from the individual visitor that comes in. Hotels make business by selling bus business. And that's what you do. You go to conferences to sell bus loads of business. These little hotels along here do exactly the same thing. I was director of sales and marketing for the Sonora Townhouse before it became the California Inns. And we all go to conferences and try to sell our hotels to bus business because a bus comes in and it brings you 20 to 25 rooms in one whack, and it's really good business. But the people who are buying on the other end, and I've been to many sales conferences, the first thing out of their mouth is, what is your TOT? Because if your TOT here is higher than it is somewhere else, they don't really care about the hotel. They're looking for a certain budget. And just remember, as you people consider raising rates on anything, when you get down to the TOT, you're not just taxing an individual visitor. You're going to maybe tax yourself out of the bus business, which is what keeps these hotels in business.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and we will return discussion amongst the city council.
Just Mayor and Council, you'll note that we do have the Excel spreadsheet on the computer and on the screen. So as you are ready for us to begin to look at different additional requests,
Sure.
I can have Julie step forward. Just let me know when you're ready for that.
Okay. Well, I don't know that there's a particular right or wrong way to approach this. I guess my suggestion would be to ask for council comments on the base budget first. And let's resolve any unresolved issues on that first. Without actually taking a vote on it, if we feel we have consensus with the base budget, then we'll go into special requests. Does that seem appropriate?
Yep.
Okay. Any particular order, please?
On the base budget.
Yes.
Okay, what I have here, my comments are, the general fund has carried a deficit balance for several years. It's now $111,749. Unallocated fund balance has been declining every year. This year it's $781,649. And the relinquishment fund that's noted as being in an additional amount that will bring our ending fund balance up to 1.22 million, I believe it is. And the post-employment fund of 148,916 seem to me to be unrealistic, as these funds are allocated already to certain items. The 291,000 is to the PSR on the Angel Oaks Foundry project, and the post-employment reserve is just that. It's in a special fund, so these are not what I would call funds that can be used for general fund, general items.
The 291 relinquishment funds are not tied to any other project.
I thought I read that somewhere.
No, they're not. So if it was read that way, it was an error by staff, but they're not tied to any project at all.
They're unallocated.
Unallocated, correct. And just as the OPEB money was allocated, council always has the option to unallocate it as well. It's currently in a designation, so it's up to this council to maintain what councils in the past did with regards to OPEB.
Julie, is it possible to put up a one-sheet summary that just summarize, base budget revenues, base budget expenditures, so that we can see what those numbers look like?
Like the summary page that's like on page 2 or 3?
I'm rifling through my, I don't come across a page that is exactly what I'm looking for.
This kind of thing?
The summary page, I think is, I don't know what page it is because it's not, I don't have it on Excel, but this is the one that generally tells you where we start and what the changes are, and then where we end up in each of the relative funds.
Page 1 in our
Page
book.
1?
Thank you.
Page 1 in our book.
I don't have pages
Yeah.
on my Excel, so I don't know.
Okay, yeah, because that covers both the revenue side and the expenditure side. So the proposed base budget total operating expenses is $7.99 million.
Were you going to base or just general fund? What do you,
I think that's
That's the
That's the
general
operating
fund.
expenditure.
General fund.
that's operating
781.
expenditures, which includes all funds.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So, using that as a starting point, is there any,
I think maybe going to Elaine's point a little bit, the base budget on here, it shows the 291,000 unallocated, and I would like to allocate that to our road funds. Back, I think it was early 2000s, we had another relinquishment amount of 434,000 that was for Vallecito Road, and that went into the general fund at the time. That's still what's bolstering our revenues to this day, our reserves to this day. So I don't want to make that I consider that a mistake. I'd like to use the road funds, or the 291 in the road funds. The last time we had major road servicing done was in 2006, 7, 8, that range there. We spent over $1.6 million. That kind of gives you an idea of the magnitude of what roads can cost to maintain. And we're putting aside $50,000 and $100,000 here and there, and it's just not enough. So I would like to allocate the 291 into roads.
Well, I share that, and in fact, I recall during the workshop, I asked that question. I said, for the first time, that relinquishment money has been identified in the road projects, and I'd like to see it continue, and I think Mike assured us that it would, right? It would not lose its identity. In next year's budget, there would be a line item that said 2016, 17 road funds, and it would have whatever the unencumbered balance.
I think I'd like to make a motion to make it official that that money goes simply into the road fund as it becomes part of that fund. So it can't be used for general purposes.
Okay?
So I'll make that motion.
Can we defer that decision until we go through the entire, balance sheet here and make a determination if that is an appropriate move?
I don't see the point in doing it, but if you have an issue, what's your hesitation?
Well, flexibility.
I guess I don't want flexibility in this case. I want to see the road funds built up. And if I'm not in the majority, then we can decide that. But I think that for me, maintaining our streets is an essential service. It's not optional. And I think we're grossly unfunded or underfunded there. And to me, I'm not flexible in that area.
And Michael's going through the questions that were submitted. One of the comments he made, I thought, was that like water and wastewater, that all of the road funds will be pulled together in a road fund item and tracked that way.
But these are not.
I understand correctly?
These are not currently road funds. These are general funds, just like the 434 that came in before.
It just goes in we need to tell it's just in the general fund. It's not allocated to anyone.
It says road relinquishment. I guess I
Yeah,
just
but that doesn't
assumed.
mean
Well,
it's allocated.
that doesn't mean it goes into the
It doesn't
road
mean it's
fund.
allocated.
And I want to make sure it funnels into the proper fund, and what I consider the proper fund.
All right.
Yeah, I'd like to see it in the family of streets and highways fund. And I would like that family of funds to have as broad a definition as possible to give staff the most flexibility, but nonetheless still maintain the color or identity of a general road type fund.
I think if it's done that way, we go for matching funds for something
And I
other
agree
than
with,
local road.
Or it'll be
Because
eaten up in
that's-
administrative fees, like the TOT roads does every year.
So you want to see it as
Local road.
as kind of brick and mortar street project only,
Yes. I think we're going to need a lot more.
including design, engineering, inspection, all of that related.
I'm mainly thinking of overlays. I mainly thinking of just, basic maintenance as we let our roads, as we let them erode, it becomes more and more expensive to bring them back to where we need them to be. And so as I'm walking through the city and I'm seeing alligators all over in the streets, and I'm realizing, wow, this is going to be more expensive to fix now, where had we sealed it a year ago or 2 years ago, or had a steady maintenance program, it would have been a lot cheaper. That maintenance program is what we've been lacking.
Can I make a comment? We also have a pavement management plan that was to do that.
Yeah.
We did that because funding was hard to come by, and when we voted on the increase in the sales tax, it was 1/3 to emergency, 1/3 to roads, and 1/3 to tourism. I was here when we voted on that, and the intent was that 1/3 to roads was to be used for keeping up our local roads. Over the years, we do so many a year, because it would be probably about 100,000. But that has gone by the wayside in the last several years. Nothing's been done.
Right.
Let me clarify. It's not that nothing's been done, but you wouldn't have your sidewalk project on Highway 49 if it wasn't for the TOT road funds. You wouldn't have your Safe Routes to Schools project as well. Now, I understand those aren't overlay projects, but that source of funds has gone to the road infrastructure in the city. It hasn't just disappeared. It's gone towards road projects.
Gone for matching funds.
Staff time related to the project, yes.
So, yeah, so it's administrative,
It's
Right.
not an overlay project.
right.
That's good, but you can also get,
I also want to make a comment. I think we need to also think about using it for matching funds as well, having some type of flexibility, because right now coming down from the legislature, from the state, if cities don't have or counties have that matching fund, we're not going to be able to get the money to help redo those roads. And I want to make sure that it's just not only for overlay. Like we have some ability to utilize that at the state level, so we can expand.
Yeah, if
you
it's
know,
matching
if-
funds to actually do the work, to actually fix the roads, I don't have a problem with that. I still want to see it eroded away as administrative fees working with COG.
as far as funds, a city that has funds to put in for Caltrans, that can be on a sales tax type thing. So you have
Okay.
funds that they could use, those could be used as matching funds.
So what I'm hearing is maybe a term like have it restricted to project-based uses where it doesn't get used for routine, nondescript maintenance of all streets. That it doesn't get used for sweeping streets
No.
and things like that. It has to be specific project-based, whether project-based as a matching fund, project-based as accessory to a curb gutter sidewalk project, or project-based as an overlay.
Not so much curb gutter.
Yeah,
No,
I'm back to just maintaining our roads in the proper condition, is what I'm looking at. That's where I feel the shortfall is.
In 2009, when they updated the pavement management plan, all the roads, all the local roads in the city, except the new ones in Greenhorn and Angel Oaks at that time, had been overlaid. And the funding was getting scarce, so that's why they voted back in 2003, where they voted for the additional TOT tax.
So that's where the $1.6 million was spent, was doing overlaying all the streets, and then funding got scarce because the building stopped. And that was all done with the traffic impact fees. So, you know.
May I suggest, a lot of times when council is discussing the wording on these things, the wording becomes everything as it moves forward. Regardless of what the intent was with the TOT funds, they worded the resolution and the proposal for the tax very, very generally. I would suggest, since we don't have this money, if maybe we can come back with the suggested wording and us get it right instead of kind of slotting it in here. We don't even have the money at this stage of the game, but if you want to remember that for when you're looking at the $100,000 and funding it from this potential 291, you can take that into consideration. But let us get that wording right for you, bring it back, because from an accounting perspective, it does mean something. It gets a different classification, it gets put aside, and the whole bit, and I would like to see that done the way you want it done.
I think that's a good suggestion. It also will give the new council an opportunity to weigh in on this as well. My personal feeling is, yeah, I think it needs some restrictions put on it. I'd like to see it used project-based, but built in some flexibility and latitude so that the money can be used and blended the right way to get the most use out of it. The more restrictive you make a funding source, the more complicated it becomes to try to make it fit.
Or the more complicated it becomes to misuse it, depending on how you're looking
Well,
at it.
anyway, that's my feeling. If somebody wants to make a motion, otherwise, we can do that.
Well, so what I'll move that we assign the 291 to road funds for now with more detailed. Now, you know what? I want to make a motion that we assign the 291 to road funds for maintenance of our streets only.
I'll second.
For overlay. Maintenance as in overlay.
Julie, do we have a category that is available for that assignment?
I was anticipating that it would be a separate fund by itself. This will just guide what it can be used for.
But his recommendation was to assign the 290, relinquish them to road maintenance. We have an account for that now that we use?
Not necessarily an account. We kind of manage things by funds. You know, any source like the excess local transportation money we get goes into a separate fund, and that has its guidelines. This would be considered a road type fund. It would stay a road type fund and would be guided by whatever motion you make right now. So no, there's not an account. Within the fund will show an account for maintenance, and if that's all we can use it for, that's all we can use it for.
Except it would appear no different, except more detail than what you see on the screen now.
Well,
It does have a home at this point in time. We're trying to put a little bit more definition to the use of funds.
Yeah, it's complicated enough to look through here and try to understand things, and the more we add the little details, the more difficult it becomes over time.
Right.
We, in our discussion, understand the objective. Next council with the 3 new members, will that be carried through?
You know, the prior council voted to put the $434,000 relinquishment money into the general fund with absolutely no ties on it at all.
Yeah.
I really don't want to give the future council that much flexibility in this case. Somewhere we have to have money assigned to repair and maintain our roads, period. And we don't have that right now.
They have to be allocated to that specifically.
Right.
I agree with Scott. I'd like to get this resolved now, not wait. I don't want to delay it.
Well, I agree, Councilman Behill, the concept. I think it needs to be earmarked. But as an example, I'm thinking maybe 3 years ago, if you go by Mr. Behill's example of what he wants it used for, when they overlaid the parking lot, the public parking lot next to the Utica Hotel, that was overlaid. Your definition would not allow those monies to be used to overlay a public parking lot.
Yeah.
So when that happens, where's that money going to come from? When a parking lot needs to be repaired and overlaid, how are you going to do that?
Right now, when our streets need to be repaired and overlaid, there is no fund for that specific purpose.
I understand what you're trying to do, but I'm still thinking it's better to be flexible with regard to the objective, okay? And the more prescriptive you get, the more difficult it is for Julie to do that.
I understand your point. It's well taken. It's just the flexibility on those funds in the past has led them away from maintaining our roads, and so that's why
That's what you're here for.
Yes, sure, that's part of our job.
So I think we have a motion.
We have a motion on the floor.
Repeat the motion, please.
I move that the $291,000 relinquishment money for the Vallecito Bridge be assigned in some way, shape, or form to a road fund used specifically for maintaining our public streets.
And I second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. I'd like to speak to the motion. the word maintenance leaves a whole lot of wiggle room where the money can be. It can be used for our own public works staff going out and sweeping the streets on a monthly basis. That's road maintenance. If you want to see a capital overlay project, then I think you need to define it as such. Because maintenance can mean a whole lot of stuff, and you'll never see an overlay project.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the term overlay, so if that implies what I'm getting at, then I'm fine. I'll accept that amendment.
That's off the road. Overlay.
It was the capital aspect of it, as opposed to maintenance.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's a capital, I think regular maintenance, and I'm talking about overlay sealing,
Maybe overlay or reconstruction.
A refurbishment or whatever.
resurfacing, or,
Yeah.
yeah,
Resurfacing.
that's
I
the,
think we're all on the same page. It's just the wording that Julie has to come up with, as
Yeah.
she said.
right.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Mary, we'll leave it up to you to get the exact wording of the motion. Okay, thank you for that. So with that, addition to the main base budget, is there any other further discussion, any line items, any categories, any projects that someone either does like or doesn't like?
I thought we were going to separate the other projects
Well,
from
we
the
are.
base budget. So we're-
And I'm just
we're-
talking about the base budget.
So you're seeing other base budget item
Yeah.
questions.
As an example, Mr. McCatton pointed out last time we met, it's not necessary to have a city election. So there's $6,000 in that one department that can be used in some other way. Is there other examples of the kinds of things you'd like to see? Mary's not so sure of that, huh?
Well, as of today, we haven't received any applications. If we don't receive any applications, then we have to go out to a special election.
Oh, really?
Which
Okay.
will probably cost as much, if not more, because
Okay.
we're all of them.
Well, then maybe, yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So apparently, we need to leave that line item just as it is.
I think in the future, we're going to need to address some of the issues. I would like to see just a conversation about restructuring fire, restructuring police, restructuring admin. Are there any things that we can do to help streamline processes and minimize costs? But that's not something for here for tonight.
Sure. Okay. All right. What I get a sense for is that everybody is pretty comfortable with a baseline budget describing revenues and expenditures as shown on page 1. So really then we're on to the additional requests.
Approve the base budget first?
Yeah, let's
before you-
approve the base budget.
You want to do
I
that?
think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, then we got a starting number. So is there anybody that wants to make a motion to that effect?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the base budget presented in the table 1 or page 1 of the budget binder, with the exception of the amendment or clarification that we just approved.
I'll second that.
Been moved by Councilman Soban, seconded by Councilman Behill to approve the base budget as described on page 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimous, so that's your starting number. All right, then moving on to additional requests. If you can put that other. Now, what you're showing is what we received tonight. There's some changes.
That is correct. We moved the dollars from the general fund column to the road column as it related to the staircases. And I
Oh,
believe
okay.
that item was highlighted, and those
Sure.
are the only changes that were on the new copy.
Got it, okay. All right, we have two types of entries here. We have those that are recommended for adoption by the city administrator, and we have those requests that are not recommended for adoption. Let's work backwards, and let me ask, is there any, you want to say something?
Knowing how much deliberation you might do on this, it may be easier to take on the water and wastewater fund projects first, since those funds are more restrictive, and you'll note that most of those are highlighted because
Yeah.
there are reserves capable of handling those purchases. So it may be easier to get through that portion first and then move on to roads and the rest of the general fund.
Okay, let's try that. Okay, starting with project number 22, from that point forward, all of the proposed requests are either water fund funded or sewer fund funded. All but the last two are recommended for approval.
I'm sorry, we updated that as well. Those last two are updated, are yellow. They were supposed to be yellow on the first
Okay,
draft.
so
36 and 37 you're
Yes.
talking about? Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we have project 20,
Is this the new one?
yeah, 22 through 37 inclusive that are recommended for approval.
I'll move we approve all those items.
I second.
Okay, moved by Councilman Behill, seconded by Councilwoman Morris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we'll focus on the first 21. And let's start with those, that category of those that are not recommended for approval. Is there anybody that wishes to argue that they want approval of something?
Well, I understand that there's highlights and there's not highlighted ones, but I'd like to know which, if any, have any kind of liability or potential liability attached to them. For example, someone can fall through a staircase, or I don't necessarily know that I want to prioritize them the way that they're prioritized now.
Well, as I mentioned, the gazebos were removed at this point in time for consideration because the staff's going to take a better and different look at those. The staircase has been an ongoing issue for a number of years. I think the fact that we've identified that TOT roads as a available source becomes a very, very good viable alternative, hence the reason why it's recommended now. Outside of that, there's no real liability issues, except with regards to the mower, and we're going to keep riding and taking care of it until she drops. But we'll have to see how that goes. But there's no liability tied to any of these items outside of the potential of the staircase.
Okay.
The Downtown Sustainable Fund, could they be used on the staircase?
The what?
Any of those? This Downtown Sustainable Fund?
That's just for planning projects.
That's just planning?
Yeah, it can't be used for sticks or mortar.
How about community development block grant?
No, we've tried that before because the nexus is mostly land use that it benefits tourists more than residents. CDBG becomes an ill-eligible source. And we're outside of the current grant cycle at this point in time anyways. But we have looked at parking lots and those types of improvements before with CDBG, and it just is not an eligible use.
So, can we look at the road number 7, the staircase, and number 21, Those are road fund issues.
Okay.
So I move that we approve items number 7.
Before we go on.
There's
you
two
got an
staircases.
Yeah, number 7.
Option 1 and option 2. You want to do them both?
No, just number.
The next page,
I want
number
to
8.
approve. I want to approve number 7.
Number 8 is also.
Yeah,
I'm not-
the number,
I don't want to. I don't want to approve number 8.
Well, that's what I'm.
My motion is for number 7 and number 21.
Okay, I'd like to understand the difference then.
yeah, what's the
What is
difference?
option 1 and option 2 with regard to physical change?
Materials. One is wood and one is metal.
I think we should go for metal because then it's
Oh, I see.
easier to maintain.
I'm assuming a wood one will last for 30 years or 40 years.
But if we have the
The
funding.
the metal becomes a little more decorative than a wood staircase is. And the lifespan's going to be much longer than a wood staircase. Now, the wood one's been there for a number of years, but the metal is a more decorative and would serve more of an entry type feature for that.
And if it caught fire, it would be less of a fire issue.
Would the metal one be a safety issue in, say it rains or snows or coming down?
No, no more so than any other surface where, in fact, metal would probably be safer than wood because the grading and all that would allow for the flow of water, through the step itself.
They'd still be wet.
Yeah, I mean, the wood can ice up.
Yeah.
Just
I
as
see,
easily
well,
as-
the metal can ice up.
Yeah, but keep in mind the metal is not going to be a solid step. It's going to have venting and airspace in between each step.
Can we go to bid on both of these and make a decision at a later time with more detailed? And just sign a budget
I
item
think
at this
that's a
point?
good idea, but for budgeting purposes, if that's your pleasure, they ought to budget for the higher
Higher
one.
number.
The
And
higher
then,
number.
Okay.
once bids are received, then bid it as an alternate.
We can do that.
I can do that.
May I also request when you make these proposals that you tell me which one of the road funds you would like the money to come from? Right now, I have on the board what we have presumably in those balances at this stage of the game, so that you can see it. Do I have my pointer in the middle of that? We have the TOT roads, which I think staff was recommending. That's where we do the staircase from because it's got the most general use categories associated with it. The $100,000 road project then would probably need to come from road relinquishment, which we just said was a proper purpose for it, or gas tax, or a combination of the two.
I think that's a good idea. My suggestion would be to fund it from the source that is the most restrictive but yet qualified for, and keep maximum flexibility for things like road relinquishment and so forth. So if it qualifies as a TOT expense, and that's more restrictive than a road relinquishment fund, then fund it from that one. It's harder to spend restricted money than unrestricted money. And so if you find an eligible use for restricted money, I say use it.
Then I would recommend you take part of it out of the gas tax fund, which can be utilized for actual road projects, capital projects of this nature. That's probably the most restrictive one you have. However, if you're going to do the staircase as well, that's pretty much going to take up most of your TOT funds, so that would mean that the remaining would have to come out of the other two categories if you wanted to do a $100,000 project.
Okay, so in that case,
We're basically talking about $150,000.
yeah, so I move that we approve item number 8, subject to bids for $47,000 to be taken from the TOT roads account.
Something 50,000.
That should leave about 20.
147.
What's left, Julie?
What's the balance?
Like $20,000 or something.
That would leave approximately, I think it's 17,000 left in TOT.
Okay.
But TOT is your broadest classification that can be used for the most things. It's your least restrictive at this stage of the game.
That's why I'm using it for the stairs, right?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, and hopefully then we can get something less than 47,000.
Okay.
I would also recommend, since your operating budget does depend on those TOT funds, that you not run that fund down to zero.
So are you going to combine that with your motion for the?
Well, let's just do it one at a time. Let's just do it one at a time. So
One
we're
at
dealing
a
with that-
time, all right.
Dealing with that fund.
He did 4.
Okay.
47, so now
Uh,
we're dealing with 100,000.
So you made a motion to that effect. Is there a second?
Do we need it?
Well, we're going to vote on these things separately.
Okay.
So
Got it.
let's take a second to that motion.
I will second.
So we're on 8 now.
Okay, moved by Councilman
That was
Behill,
eight.
seconded by Councilman Soban. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now, moving on to the road.
Do you have it, excuse me for a second, did you say gas or TOT?
That's TOT.
TOT for that one.
Okay, item 21.
I'll move that we approve that item, taking half the funds from the gas account and half the funds from the relinquishment fee account.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Councilman Behill, seconded by Vice Mayor Follendorf. Is everybody ready to vote on that?
After the relinquishment, I understand, but the gas tax, how much in the gas?
There was roughly a little bit over 50.
It's 50,700 something
So we're
dollars.
taking essentially all of it.
Yep.
Yes.
That's the most restricted one, so we should use it all for this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll say aye.
Was there any no's?
I would like, oh, you have any more?
That was unanimous then?
That's
Was
right.
it unanimous?
I didn't hear
I didn't,
anything.
no, I said yes.
You said yes.
I
Okay.
didn't say no.
All right, that was unanimous then.
Mayor, I was asked earlier if there was any liability issues. I would say that the steel door at Gateway Park for $1,200 could be viewed as a liability. And secondarily, the replacement of the police vehicle, which has over 90,000 miles, while it's not written in the detail, that could be considered a liability if the car can't roll.
So they could lease that, couldn't they?
That can also be leased, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I just
Now,
want to clarify, thank you.
now what we've done is we've gone through the special request for sewer, water, and the road category. So everything left is general fund.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you take the 5-minute break, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. We will recess for 5 minutes.
So why?
Stand up.
Okay.
Okay. We will reconvene, and as I was saying, now we're down to the leftover requests are all general fund requests, and I'd like to dispense with the non-recommended entries first. And so my question is there anything between the first 21 items that are not recommended for funding that somebody would like to change?
I would like to change one.
Okay.
I'd like to recommend number 11, the retrofit for the metal building insulation at the museum, because of the extenuating circumstances regarding the reason that that needs to be taken care of.
Yep.
The insulation. I believe
I follow up on that. Michael, can you give us your rationale of why that was not recommended? It's not a necessary
I think
expense?
it's part of our
Well, it's a necessary expense, and the city attorney's office has done quite a bit of work towards that. At this point in time, the number you have is a not-to-exceed amount, but I don't think we're done with regards to negotiating the install price related to the material. We've had the material delivered. As I understand it, the contractor who installed it is asking for full price to install the new insulation, but we believe we should be in discussions with them about that before we just settle on it.
Okay, I understood that part of our packet was a bid from the original installer.
We do have.
Is that true?
It was it's in the actual budget.
It's part of the bid, yeah.
It was 34,000.
But you're saying you think we can negotiate even a better bid someplace else?
I'm saying we should be in discussions with him on his proposal, since he was already paid to install the insulation correctly the first time.
Okay.
There was
So you're maybe,
there was a
you're
problem.
saying maybe it's not that it shouldn't be done, it's that we shouldn't do it without further negotiations. We shouldn't budget for it now.
Well, if you budget for it now, this is the worst scenario it would be, but we're still in discussions with them about the price and terms.
This is a labor-only number, right?
Yes, as I understand it.
So if we don't budget for it now, and you get a favorable negotiated bid, how will you handle that? Come back for a budget amendment?
Come back for an amendment.
Let's do that.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to do that.
We don't have to do anything.
Okay, I don't
Oh,
know.
we're not going to do anything at all tonight?
If we don't add it to the to-do list, then it's,
If we don't approve it, it just dies for, yeah. So we just won't
I
approve
didn't-
that tonight.
Okay,
Say that again?
If we don't approve it, then he has to bring it back as a budget amendment later, which is what we want, right?
Okay.
So it's just.
So, because it could change. All right. Very good.
I would like to revisit number 5. Number 5 shows a $2,000 expenditure for the Mark Twain Badger Boosters Angels Camp Run. That's, we get more in TOT than that, I believe. That brings in hundreds of people to our community, and to me, that's a really inexpensive way to generate a lot of revenue, and also expose our community in a positive light to outside folks. So I'd like to see us continue that support.
I actually have that one circled as well, and I would like to see council consider supporting the run as well.
how does that rank with regard to some of the other unfunded city promotional?
My criteria for this budget is to support whatever we can show brings in revenue and shows our city in a good light to the outside world. For example, I'm fully in support of the Christmas parade, but not necessarily all the decorations. I think a lot of that can be done through volunteer and fundraising. The parade might bring some folks down as tradition. I'm not in support of the beautification efforts downtown. That's $5,500 that I think can be used to support a festival or something that'll actually bring people in, create TOT, create sales tax. And that's the way I'm looking at this. So to me, the Gold Run is a no-brainer. And it's not a cash outlay, it's reimbursement of, our staff has to help. A lot of this is to offset billable hours that our staff provides.
I'm not willing to support that. I think that if the city staff has to be at the event, then they should pay the cost. The city can't afford to keep paying for community support in the long term. That's even been mentioned in our executive. I'm not in favor of continuing any support for outside nonprofit agencies.
Well, let's just focus on this particular one.
Well, I'm not going to
If we're
support
not,
that.
if in lieu of cash, if we are able to waive some fees for them to have staff support, whether that's PD or fire helping with roads or some road direction, I would be willing to support that. Like
This is-
fee waivers
That's
or
what
something.
this is. This is the cost of staff
Okay, then yeah.
to close the roads and
Do all of
monitor
that.
traffic for the event.
This is a Saturday event, so they would be paid Sunday, so it's
Sunday.
overtime rates?
Yeah.
You have any comment on it?
I'm on the fence. Initially, I liked the category it's in. That's why I asked the question about what it compared to some of the other promotional things. Where does it rank?
Well, my feeling is, it hasn't changed since the last time this came up. I think if we start funding requests like this, we are opening up a dangerous precedent. This is to benefit the children at Mark Twain Junior Elementary School. And if we start lending public support to this, what happens to Bret Hart High School wrestlers, Bret Hart football boosters? All of these are education-based activities to raise revenue for the children. A substantial portion of the children that attend Mark Twain Elementary live in Copperopolis. They live outside the city. Why are we using city funds to support non-residents' children? This is why we have school taxes. This is why we have school districts. Expenses for school-related activities should be funded by the schools or through their charitable activities, not with city subsidy. So I am not in favor of this.
And normally, I would agree with you in principle. The difference with this is an event that actually brings hundreds of people from outside the city into the city. I don't know how many hotel rooms it takes to generate $2,000 in TOT at about, what, 15, 20 bucks a head? It's not that many. And so that's why this is different than just a fundraiser. This is, perhaps they'll do this. They're going to do the fundraiser whether we approve this or not. So maybe, I just think, again, the city could. Okay. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? If so, do you want to make a motion then to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 5.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to fund item number 5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Opposed?
Hey.
No.
So that fails on a 2-3 motion. Okay. Again, sticking with the non-recommended projects, is there any other thing on that list that we want to change?
Good. I have a question on the gazebo in the park. Michael, you made some statements about the reason that it's not on the recommended list, and because it's pretty dilapidated, but it's not a liability issue from falling down, so.
Yeah, one of the reasons I want to take a look at it is that there are other funding sources other than just general fund that could be utilized. CDBG would be a good example. Impact fees would be another example. So there are other sources that are available for the gazebo, and since it's not a imminent safety risk, staff wants to study it and possibly come up with recommendations in the future, as well as identify funding sources for the council to consider that in the future.
Okay. But it's not a long-term issue because it's pretty tacky looking.
Understand.
And if you want to have an attractive park, that doesn't add too much attractive. Anyway, so it's going to be looked at.
Yep.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, so then it's appropriate for someone to make a motion for items 2, 3, 6, 7, 9.
8.
Oh, 8 we've already dealt with.
You're taking off the unhighlighted one.
Yeah.
Okay.
9, 11, 13, and 14. It's appropriate to someone to make a motion to,
Well, and 16 and 18.
oh, yes, and 16 and to not fund these.
Well, can we talk about number
Same
3,
here.
the parade?
Sure.
Again, it's an event that that attracts people downtown, and so I'm not opposed to supporting events. And so I maybe throw $1,000 for the parade to make sure the parade happens, and then decorations and things be taken out of private fundraisers.
So you're saying you would support it, or you would support it at $1,000 amount?
I would support it at $1,000 or $1,500, but $1,000 would be good. That'll take care of the parade itself, and the decorations and such can go elsewhere.
Any other comment on that?
I won't be supporting it.
Yeah, I'm not going to support it either, and that's, the argument you had for the run was that people come and stay. The Christmas parade is going to bring people for the day and watch the parade and then go home.
Right. Again, it's
And
going to
so
present
that-
Angels Camp in a good light, though.
Okay, but there are other things. We have a Mark Twain Festival coming up that's going to, over several days, present Angels Camp in a much more glowing fashion, I think.
Right.
So I think that's the reason I won't vote.
I don't know, if you feel...
I'll make the motion
Okay, there's a motion.
that we support
to
the
support item number 3, Christmas activities at the level of $1,000. Is there a second to that motion?
Okay.
Seeing none, that dies for a lack of a second.
Okay, in that case, I'll move that we deny all requests that are not highlighted at this time.
1 through 18. Does that clarify it?
Right. 2,
That are not
6, 7,
highlighted.
9, 11, 13, 14, 16, and 18.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that one.
Moved by Councilman Behill, seconded by Councilman Soban. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. We're making progress. Well, let's just go start at the top and go down through them, and if we need to, we'll handle them one at a time or as a group.
Is the ACPA support going to, you figure that a continuing thing, or are we looking at an end date
It's been continuous.
forever?
It's been continuous since
No, I
I've been here.
understand that, but are we, from here forward, are we, in view of the discussions we just had, is there,
You know, ACPA derives its revenue through a variety of different sources. I can't speak to their needs and where funds come from. I would believe that if membership increased, that it would lessen the reliance on the city, but I don't run their operation. It would be hard for me to speak to that.
And there's a letter to the effect that supports their request.
You say you support it?
There's a letter that
there's a letter
Yeah.
as part of
supports
the
their
packet,
request.
yeah.
The comment that I would make earlier, Councilman Behill said he wants to support activities that bring people to Angels Camp, that make them spend the night. As an example, because I volunteered on this every year in preparation for Gold Rush Days, or now called Mark Twain Days, all the downtown flowers and barrels receive a makeover. And part of the, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the ACPA's support is used to fund those flowers and peat moss and...
That's the entire $5,500 request is for that specific purpose.
Yeah, but that's for year-round. That's for year-round. part of that goes for that specific event to bring the people downtown, that, to your point. That accomplishes exactly the kind of thing that you.
I don't think that those plants bring more people to town.
Is it appropriate to allow the requester to comment at this time?
Public hearing's been closed.
I know it has, but,
Yeah, no,
It's really
okay.
it's closed.
I understand the importance of curbside appeal, but my concern is the amount. I don't know if I can support the full amount for that, but I do understand and would still like to see some of those things, because otherwise we'd be talking about staff time. And the volunteer that does go into keeping curbside appeal downtown is good, but I just,
Well, you know,
I-
go ahead.
No, I'm not going to support this in any amount. And I don't believe staff time should have to be doing that. The people that own the businesses could water the plant if they could go out and do that. But this has been an ongoing thing ever since I've been on the council. And it's always been supported in the past, but I'm not going to support it this year.
Okay. Then,
Well, in reply to Elaine's comment, with the vacant stores downtown, you're going to have a hodgepodge of appearance then. And you'll have the vacant stores looking even more tacky.
Yeah.
So is that something you want to achieve?
I'm not going to support it, whoever is going to
Well, I
water.
gathered that. I'm just trying to convince you.
You're not going to convince.
Okay.
okay. Well, is there a motion in either one direction or the other on item number one?
Well, I'll move that we support the act, but item one in the amount of $5,500.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? I will second that motion. Okay, moved by Councilman Soban, seconded by Mayor Cullum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay. So that is rejected. Okay, next item is item 4, Destination Angels Camp request for $34,400. They submitted a cover letter along with their budget. Is there any discussion in this item?
I'll say my comments. I won't be supporting this item also. I've reluctantly supported this for the last 4 years, and by their own words, they have not been able to provide what they thought they would be able to do in 4 years. And in looking at their proposed budget, the only difference from last year's budget that I see is they want to hire a deputy executive director, and I don't think that they need that until, which would be $34,000. And I'm not willing to spend $34,000 for a deputy executive director at this time. It hasn't worked, and I don't think anything will work in the historic district until there's a bypass of the historic district, the east bypass, which would not come for a long time.
Any other council comments on this?
again, the same, for number one, if the numbers were different, maybe I would consider it, but it's just too high, and part of it has to do with what she just commented on. It just doesn't sit well with me. Maybe if it's
wasn't,
half,
yeah.
maybe another
it-
number, if council can agree on that, I would be willing to
If it
support
wasn't
it.
for that amount, they wouldn't need any of our funding.
Well, I will comment that any successful city that I am aware of that is in a growing mode rather than a declining mode has some form of outreach and marketing of their businesses and to cultivate and improve the economy. This was built as a public-private partnership. That means everybody contributes equally. The request here is basically a match against money that's already been raised from the private side of that partnership. They've cut $15,000 out of their budget. 2/3 of that cut have been assigned to the city's portion of that. As the city administrator has said over and over again, if we're going to climb our way out of this funding deficit, we've got to increase our revenues. And we do that by increasing our property tax base, sales tax base, and economic development is a way of doing that. It's not going to happen overnight. Yeah, we have a regional form of economic development assistance, but that's not focused on Angels Camp exclusively. The 5 cities of Amador County pulled out of that organization because they didn't see how it was benefiting them. And there is very little benefit that's going to come to the city if we rely strictly on Central Sierra Economic Development District. You say you're not in favor of funding the deputy executive director. Well, our executive director is full-time volunteer, and that director is getting burned out. There may be a day in the very near future where there is no executive director. It's unrealistic to think that people are going to continue to volunteer year in and year out. The organization has to move to another level. I think this is probably one of our best ways of investing in our future, and I will support it.
I agree with you, and I think this is the one thing where the city, in cooperation with the businesses, they're putting up a lot of bucks themselves.
$30,000.
To bring in and to promote the city. And if you pull that back and you do no promotion, you're not going to have any, your chance of growth even diminishes more. So I think, yes, the success rate hasn't been as good as we hoped yet, but to give up now would be a big mistake, I think, because I'm hoping that the economy is, in the near future, going to turn. And it will, if we're there promoting, have a better chance of bringing in that commercial business.
Okay. Well, my take on it is a little bit different. I've been serving on this committee for quite some time, and I've been watching and learning, and I don't want to give up on Destination Angels Camp. It's a valuable program. It helps unite our community leaders in a very positive and focused way, and it can produce results down the line. However, the way it's being operated right now, in my belief, is not as efficient and as effective as it could and should be. I think with the utilization of social media and websites, we can we can create something that is sustainable without, full-time positions. We can, and something that's measurable, results are measurable. And we can also create something that benefits the business community. The exposure that individual businesses can get, if this is done properly, this could be like an amped-up chamber of commerce for its members. So I think if it's restructured, it can be more effective, it can be sustainable, and the results measurable. And so, in my what I think would be enough to do that or get that done, if Destination Angels Camp is willing to take a route like that, is a $10,000 contribution from the city at this time. I understand the public-private partnership argument. I wonder where that argument was when the city was putting in far more than the private sector was all these last years. Last year we put in more than the private. The city has always funded much more than half of this venture. It's not working the way it is, and it's not because of the lack of volunteers or the lack of energy, but I think it is because of lack of focus and inefficiencies. And that's my state. So I'm willing to make a motion that we grant $10,000 to Destination Angels Camp for this year.
If the city were to approve a $10,000 funding, what do you think is going to happen to that $30,000 in private pledges?
I think that if it's done properly, they will see the benefits of belonging to the community. They're already getting there should be business-to-business synergies that we should be proposing and creating and encouraging, so that the business members can feed off of each other. We should have websites that focus advertising on the business members to help bring in business that way. There are ways to have technologies improve our situation, and it wouldn't be so reliant on heavy work by volunteers who are getting burned out. Because I agree with you, volunteers are going to get burned out whether the money's there or not. That burnout's coming. So the answer isn't to fund more employees. The answer is to try to figure out a way to make it sustainable. And I think that there's a way to get that done. Last year I supported this, and I said if we can't get results by this year, I'm not supporting it at all. This year, at least, I see a path where we can keep Destination Angels Camp alive. And if nothing else, if you want to think of it as a hibernation mode until things do pick up, you can think of it that way. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as a way to restructure, to force restructuring by having fewer dollars, to make it sustainable, to make it measurable. And it's something I believe can be done. So I'm willing to put $10,000 into it this year. If the changes are implemented and it works, that's great. If the changes are implemented and it doesn't work, I won't be supporting it at all next year. If we support this $10,000 and no changes are made, I will not be supporting it all next year. So that's my position on this. It's something I want to see work, but we can't support these funds at that level. So again, my motion is $10,000.
I have a question. How do you think internet is going to bring a business to Angels Camp? I can see how a website might bring customers to Angels Camp, but how does a website bring businesses to Angels Camp?
If it only brings customers, that enhances our current businesses, and that's one of the missions of Destination Angels Camp. Okay? However, the website would just simply be able to answer any questions for anybody that has any interest.
They do have that.
The bigger picture right now is we can spin our wheels all we want, but we can't change a few landlords' positions in the downtown area. We cannot change our traffic circulation problems on the northern end of the town. We can sell all we want, but we don't have the product. So what I'm trying to do is find a way to sustain us through these times without a product.
Have you looked at their website and the space availability and all of the different data that they have on there for businesses? Do you consider? Have you reviewed it lately?
I have. And it's not, to me, it's not, it can be stronger. It's getting better. The social media aspect is getting a lot better. And I just think that if we put our heads together, we can come up with a better way. And that's what I'm asking for, is a better way.
Well, my last comment is that the cumulative impact of all of those things we talked about, supporting local business, recruiting additional business, retaining jobs, the marketing, bringing people in. When people come in, businesses come in. And so you can't just focus on one exclusive part of that. Yeah, we're lagging some infrastructure, and we have unmotivated downtown property owners, but that doesn't mean you just throw up your hands and give up.
I'm not throwing up my hands and giving up.
No, I'm saying
Not at
giving up
all.
on those property owners. It takes a continuous effort, and once you stop that momentum, you'll never get it back.
Government does not create jobs on any level.
All
So I
right.
think if my motion dies for lack of second, is that what's happening?
Well, yeah, I would prefer to entertain a motion on the full request at this time, and let's see what happens with that.
Well, he's already made a motion, so we either have to get rid of
Has it
that
been
one or
seconded?
rescind it.
It hasn't been seconded, but.
No,
but,
he's made the motion.
I understand that, yeah. So if you would be willing to rescind your original.
Let it see if there's a second.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, is there a second to Mr. Behill's motion to fund Destination Angels Camp at $10,000?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Opposed. Okay, that fails on a 2-3 motion. Is there a motion to fund Destination Angels Camp at the requested amount of $34,400?
So moved.
Okay, that's been moved. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, I will second that motion. All in favor of funding Angels Camp at $34,400, say aye. Aye? Okay, that's 2 votes. Nay?
No.
Nay.
Okay, that dies on a 3-2 vote also. Okay. So at this point, is there anybody willing to make a motion to fund it at a lesser level?
How about splitting the difference and support them at 20,000? I'll move that.
Okay.
What's the motion?
I'll move that with the amount that we fund them be decreased from 34,400 to 20,000.
The 10,000 that I came up with was based on what I thought would be necessary to get the job done. And in these times, money's tight. I'm not willing to just throw an extra $10,000 for the sake of, to come to an agreement. I'm firm on the 10,000, and I will renew that motion if it's, I guess we can, it's done.
Okay, there's a motion to fund it at $20,000. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, I will second that motion as well. All in favor of funding Destination Angels Camp at $20,000, say aye. Aye. Okay, all opposed?
No.
Okay, that still fails.
I'll move we fund it at $9,000.
Is there a second to that motion? That dies for lack of a second.
Okay. We should go on to the next item.
Is there anybody else that wishes to make a motion on this item?
Would council consider 15?
You can make a motion.
I motion for 15,000.
How much?
15.
15.
15.
I will second that motion as well. All in favor of funding Destination Angels Camp at $15,000, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Was that 4 votes I heard?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, opposed?
No.
That passes on a 4-1 vote. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 10. Hiring a consultant to pursue potential increase in sales tax. Any further discussion on that?
I'm not in favor of supporting, increasing the sales tax to generate general fund revenue.
You are not in favor of that?
I'm not in favor.
Of any sales tax change. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, the only comment I would have is, has probably been said before, Angels Camp is the only city in our surrounding regional area that still has a sales tax of 7.5%. Our two major competitors, Sonora and Jackson, are both at 8%. And with a 0.5% sales tax increase would generate in the area of $500,000.
Just over 400,000.
Okay. Sales tax is an incremental increase like that is an invisible tax. People are not driving from Sonora to do their shopping in Angels Camp to save a 0.5 penny sales tax. That's not happening. People are not coming here from Jackson because we have a cheaper sales tax. The buying patterns will continue as they are even if we're at 8%. But this will get this city out of its revenue shortfall.
What is the county's sales tax?
Is it 7.5%? 7.5% as well. And again, I don't think people's buying habits and decisions on where to travel to do their shopping, city or county, will at all be impacted by this. It's been shown time and time again that just because the county is at 6% TOT tax and the city is at 10%, that has not changed decisions on where people stay when they're visiting this county. It is an invisible tax, and it's not part of what people use when they decide where they want to stay. So I am supportive of this. I think it's a great idea. We'll never know the answer to whether such a sales tax can be passed unless we have somebody to do the research. If there's no other question, I'll entertain a motion to fund hiring the consultant.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
And to speak to the motion, in general, I cannot support any tax increase unless it's a very specific, purpose, and it makes a lot of sense. You talk about invisible taxes. To me, no tax is invisible. I just bought a car and they taxed me based on the county.
We're not voting on imposing the tax. We're only voting on hiring a consultant to study the tax.
It's something I won't support.
We all have our intuitive feeling about what the effects might be, but unless you have a non-biased person with expertise in that area, you'll never really know whether you have an opportunity before you or not.
And just to clarify, the consultant studying the measure would tell you where are you going to have the best opportunity for the tax measure to succeed. It could be for the specific purpose of road maintenance, as an example. It still is generated from sales tax, but they'll poll the community and gauge where the most success could be, whether it's public safety, an overall general tax, or a specific tax for a specific purpose.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The city had a consultant do that a number of years ago and went all through that, and it was voted down by the residents. But I'm not in favor of hiring a consultant to go through all that.
Okay.
A second time.
Did I hear, was there a motion on the floor? Oh, yeah, we're speaking to the motion.
Right.
Yeah, so it's been moved and seconded already to hire the consultant for $30,000. Any additional discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Nay.
That fails on a 2-3 motion. If I may be so bold, I think we have probably gone through the more controversial items. Is there any interest to act on items 12, 15, 12 through 20 collectively as a group? What's that?
You go all the way through the.
Well, we already did that one.
Oh, I thought that
We
was
did
not-
21.
Oh,
So the only remaining ones are 12, 15, 17, 19, and 20. And it was pointed out that 12 and 19 do pose a liability to the city.
19, we could lease,
Yeah, lease.
and if we can squeeze an extra year out of a vehicle, I mean, it's a 90,000, I mean, how old's that vehicle we're replacing?
90,000 is useful miles for a police vehicle. It doesn't go by years. It goes by miles.
Okay, how many,
It's at 90,000.
how old is it?
Again, we measure the age of a vehicle by police
I
vehicles.
understand, but it tells me-
I don't know what age it is. I can look it up and get back to you on that.
Do we know the average number of miles traveled a year?
Each vehicle varies. Todd, do you know what year it is? 2006.
10 years old.
10 years old.
10 years old, so that's 9,000, can we squeeze another 9,000 out at 99 and revisit this next year?
I mean, you can pull that out as a lease and make that a lease purchase.
Yeah.
And
I'd like,
That's good.
I'd like to see us, I'd like to see
squeezing out
us,
years is rolling the dice. We just replace the transmission. You know, you roll a dice. You roll it on more expensive maintenance costs.
I would like to see it pulled out as a lease.
I'd like to see us pull it out as a lease if we absolutely have to do it. So I'd like to see us wait and, address this at a time when we absolutely have to, or next year, whichever's first. How's that?
It's my recommendation. It's highlighted based on the necessities
Yeah,
now.
I think we need to. I think we need to consider.
I think public safety is paramount, and I think we should go with the recommendation myself.
Yeah, I would do that. I mean, how do we define absolutely necessary?
Yeah.
We have professionals that we ask to give recommendations. They've done that. So we either trust that they're doing the right thing or we don't. So
Julie, do you have an idea what a lease would be?
Not with me, no. I'd have to bring that back if we changed it to the lease. We have the recent interest rates, and I have that back at the office, but I don't have it here.
So we really are faced with approving it as a purchase or doing it later as a budget amendment, I guess, huh?
Correct.
How much would you really be saving if we did a lease versus just purchase?
You're going to be paying interest on it. The cost difference is going to be the interest.
And I don't want to be paying interest on something if we can just pay it off. I mean, that's really not in our interest either to be paying interest.
In the comments, what does that mean, total cost of 50,000?
Yeah, 50,000. I thought it was
There's
20,000.
there's funding source that we can pull to equip the vehicle through Homeland Security funds. So it's only 27,000 general fund money. Homeland Security funds would
they're-
cover the rest of it.
Well,
Yeah, then
that's
I would
another
do-
argument towards
Yeah.
purchasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
support purchase.
I do.
All right, so should we leave that in with the group? We have
Yes.
four items left,
Yeah, just leave it in with the group.
okay? Okay, I would like to comment on item number 20. Initially, I wasn't in favor of this. As a small city, I didn't think we could afford the work that the fire chief is doing, but just looking at what has been accomplished, the revenue that's being generated, the change in the way we manage fire, we strategize over fire, I'm now supportive of you.
And this is a budget item just to give us flexibility in case we decide to go that route, because this is not an employment, this is kind of awkward.
It's a budget approval that would give me the direction to move towards an employment.
Right now, it's a stipend increase.
Correct.
So if it was a change of contract, that would be a separate
I mean,
issue.
I'll support this to keep the discussion alive, but I'm not prepared to make that decision to go forward.
You're either, I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not sure where you're at.
Well, so
You're either
I think what
supportive
Scott is suggesting, we're budgeting for a position.
No,
We're budgeting
Or a stipend.
to increase
For a stipend.
move from a stipend to increase, to change that to a part-time salary.
That's not as the way it's worded.
You want to weigh in on this, Darrell?
I'm sorry.
This was a closed session item that we was discussing. I mean,
It will be hourly, yeah.
Right.
Why aren't they discussing that at the MOU? Isn't that next year?
He's not represented.
Oh, that's right.
this is not an appropriate place and time to discuss this.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Well,
but we need to put it in our budget so we can further those discussions.
Right, to have the flexibility to do this if we want
You're
to.
not-
But
you're
we
not-
need to,
if you don't put it in the budget,
we can't discuss
having the
it.
discussion in a negotiation doesn't really work because you have no authority. You could continue discussing, but then if you came to a deal in principle, you'd have to do a budget amendment.
Right.
So if
I
you
think
put the
that's-
authority in now, you're not binding yourself, but you're at least passing a budget that would authorize that.
Yeah.
Which is what I alluded to, would then move me towards bringing an employment item back to you.
Okay.
That would be
This
down to-
23,700 was calculated based on how many estimated hours?
Julie, you recall
I'm
how
sorry.
many hours? 15 hours a week?
I think it was 15 hours a week.
We don't,
So if we felt we wanted to do this, but maybe at a reduced number of hours,
we're getting into there. I'm not
Yeah, we're
comfortable
not
with this
supposed
discussion.
to discuss that here, are we?
In order for us to go further, we need to
Put something in
do
the pot.
something now.
We can always do a budget amendment when we actually figure out what to do. Instead of discussing specifics about an employee in a general meeting.
You also may not want to tip off the employee to what the budget amount is.
sure. No, I understand there's value in that.
There's various values. But in what you do tonight will not preclude you from negotiating. But if you don't have if you don't have the authority in the budget after tonight, then you have to do a budget amendment, which after the budget is adopted requires a 4/5 vote.
And that's what I thought we were aiming for, that goal, so we knew what numbers to work with. Because we can't.
Well, so we're not here all night. I'm in favor of 20, as it's written.
I'm not comfortable negotiating any price until we
But we need to include
have
it
an
in the
opportunity.
budget.
It's a budget item.
It's a budget item.
I'd support a budget amendment at the time.
What's your position?
Okay, well, looks like we're focusing on item 20. So is there a motion?
Wait a minute.
We need
You
we have-
first asked about 12 through 19.
Yes, I know,
There's no
but it
motion.
sounds like this one here needs special
Okay,
attention.
do you want to do the other ones first, so we can
Yeah,
just
let's
get
do
that
the other
in
one.
order?
Yeah, okay,
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the funding for items 12 through 19 that are highlighted
So
as budgeted. I mean, as,
12, 15, 17, and 19.
right.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Okay.
Okay, been moved by Councilman Soban, seconded by Councilwoman Morris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, those pass unanimously. We are down to item number 20.
And it's not that I'm not supportive of this item, it's just that I feel like this is premature, and I'm not scared of a budget amendment if we decide to go that route later on.
I don't see it as that. I see it as having a bogey to work with, okay? And having it in the budget simplifies the process, in my estimation.
And I agree with Bud on that.
This is the highest cost scenario, not necessarily the actual cost.
And just reminding the council, my direction was to bring this in consideration as part of the budget, which is what I did at your direction.
And
Yes.
this is what we needed.
Okay, is there someone willing to make a motion on this item?
I'll make that motion.
I second.
Okay, moved by Councilman Soban, seconded by Vice Mayor Bollendorf to fund the budget item 20 at $23,700. All in favor? Say
Question.
aye. What?
I wanted to, I had a question
Okay,
before we
you're
vote.
going to speak to the motion.
Okay, now now I forgot what I was going to, okay, if we do it as a budget amendment after the budget's done, and do you think you're not going to get a 4/5 vote? Is that why you want to put it in the budget now?
I'm just
Because
acting on behalf of the direction
We
council
told
has had.
them to bring that. That was what we asked for.
No, that was at the time when we didn't have budget numbers.
Exactly, and so now
But I didn't think it was be included
we
in
need
the
to
budget
include
and
it
in
so
this
we can
discussion.
discuss.
If our attorney says we can go ahead and take a vote, okay.
Okay.
You have a motion and a second, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and seconded. All in favor of funding item 20 as a budget item only for $23,700, say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. So I think was the last remaining item on our budget?
Which the last item then would be the budget resolution.
Yes, I mean in terms of line item. So, one of these big stacks, I had a resolution.
It's in the meeting binder.
Well, I pulled it
It's in
out.
the other.
Okay, I have it here. So, to adopt the budget, we need to pass resolution number 16-35, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Angels Camp adopting the annual budget for 2016-17 fiscal year. And under section 1, the missing number would be
579,579. We should play the ladder.
Okay. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Soban, seconded by Councilman Behill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you, council. This has been
We got 2 more items.
I know, it's been a tough one. Thank you. Thank members of the audience for staying with us during this. And now, moving on to the next agenda item. Which is item number 3. And Derek, this is an
Sure,
item presented by you.
Hopefully, this is a simple item. We would look at this as somewhat of a cleanup item. The council has previously approved development fees, and technically, all you need to do is adopt those by resolution. But sometimes, in our opinion, it's better to also have some authorizing language in your code that deals with some procedural issues, in this case, where the money will be kept, and also what, even though it's a codification of state law, some of the exemptions from the requirement, and basically the value is that zoning codes, this would be part of your zoning code, but municipal codes, zoning codes are online. And so when a developer or the developer's attorney goes and looks at all of the requirements, they'll look at the zoning code. And sometimes resolutions aren't necessarily online. Now, you can put a fee schedule online, that's certainly helpful, but it's always been our approach, many of those of us in the city attorney world, that we like to be belt and suspenders. So really, you're not doing anything unique here. You're simply adopting what is your existing practice into your city code. And again, it's a belt and suspenders thing. So my recommendation is that you consider this tonight. You can introduce it, and then there would be a second meeting at your next meeting in which you could adopt it.
Okay, but it doesn't require a public hearing.
It does not. It's technically, even though we're putting it in a zoning code, it's technically a normal, what I'd call a general city ordinance.
Okay.
You can do that. There's no harm in doing that.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
Okay.
So that would be at the next council meeting? The 20th? If we don't need to do, well.
The first meeting in October.
Second
No,
meeting,
the 20th.
2 weeks.
Two? Oh, yeah, second meeting of October. September.
Our next meeting.
Yeah, okay. Any other council comments?
I have a comment that Council Member Morris pointed out that under effective date, just so you know with your motion, the second paragraph says this ordinance is considered by the planning commission. That would be changed to the city council. It was just a
Okay.
typo, so that would be corrected.
Okay. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item? Okay. If not, let's see. It just takes a motion
Motion.
to schedule this for adoption on September 20th.
And introduce it. You're
Well,
introducing.
she's written as a public hearing as well. And Derek says we don't have to do the public hearing.
You don't have to if you don't want to. Even though I've asked him to do it,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. Okay. So
Is
you
there-
don't need to set a public hearing if you don't want.
The advantage or the importance of making that decision now is notification. That's it, right?
The public hearing is really essentially just your publishing notice in the newspaper.
Yeah.
You're only required to do that for certain items, but zoning ordinances, and there's some code sections that specifically define what is a zoning ordinance, and certain land use hearings have to be noticed. But technically, a general city ordinance, and that's what this is, does not require the published notice in the newspaper. That said, there's nothing to say you can't go above and beyond what the law requires and set a public hearing.
With that in mind, why can't we just approve it right now?
You have to read the ordinance twice.
Okay.
So this would be your introduction, or you have to waive the reading. But it's that two-step process that we follow for ordinances, the
Okay.
introduction.
All right,
enactment.
gotcha. All right. I think then if we don't need a public hearing, we ought to just notice it and have the reading and vote on it.
Okay, so we're going to make a motion as presented, deleting the reference to setting a public hearing.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, been moved and seconded to introduce ordinance number 477, adding chapter 17.1 to the City of Angels Municipal Code concerning the adoption of fire protection, police services, traffic, and park, and in-loop park impact fees. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimous. The last item on the agenda is resolution number 16-34, updating and adopting the city conflict of interest code. Is there,
Okay, we have a little snafu, and I apologize that the resolution, the conflict of interest code has an attachment A, And it may be that I did not forward that to Mary, so I apologize. This does not have to be done this evening, but what it is we're, just a general introduction, we're updating your conflict of interest code. It has to be done every 2 years, and we have to give notice to the Fair Political Practices Commission, the FPPC. The last time you did this was a number of years ago, and you've changed some of your positions. And state law has also added some disclosure categories. You as city council members already have to file. Michael and we already have to file, so this doesn't change our requirements. This changes your other positions. And there are some of our positions that technically aren't subject to filing requirements by our own code. And so what we were doing is bringing back something to modernize that. Unfortunately, though, I don't think you can really review this without the exhibit. And I apologize, but it's not time sensitive. So I can bring that back to you next week, or next meeting.
So are we just going to not act on this or continue this to the next?
Continue it to the next meeting. Okay. That would be my request.
Do you need a motion to that effect?
I'd go ahead and make a motion if you can.
I'll move we continue this item to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that concludes our meeting for tonight. Yeah, is there any additional summary of the calendar going forward?
Okay, tomorrow is COG at 5:30 now. 5:30 is COG at the Board of Supervisors. 8:30 on Thursday is the Mark Twain Wild West Fest meeting in the ACPA office. There's also a 6 o'clock Planning Commission meeting. On the 15th is the Museum Commission at 8:30. On the 19th, Monday, 6 o'clock is LAFCO, and at 6 o'clock on the 20th, we are back here. That's all I have.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mary.
That's okay.
They
I
are
think we
adjourned.
just missed.
I think what happened is when the person who did this did only 2 documents.
Okay.
We just missed
Wow,
I-
got through it.